All right, hi everyone. So here's an outline. I thought we'd talk outlines. Um, since we have so many, like I've been saying, moving parts in our problem solution paper compared to the work that we've done so far. And what I mean by that are just the number of claims that we're going to have, the number of sources we're probably going to be working with. Sometimes it can be helpful to to make an outline to help organize our thoughts. Um, so, what we'll do is we'll go over this outline first. This is just I'm calling it a skeleton outline. Um, what we have are some familiar sort of concepts with the Roman numeraling and the different categories. This is I'm hesitating so much because this is not the only way that you could respond to our prompts for this paper. This is just one of the ways. And I'm trying not to qualify it so much because I don't I don't necessarily want you to, make an outline like this and draft your papers like this. I mean, you can certainly, it's why I'm sharing it. But if you feel like um, you have a different approach that you want to do things a little differently, that's all right. I mean, we talked after all in the prompt, in one of the prompts about the sort of block method, which this one kind of is. This outline is sort of set up like that versus a point by point method. If you want to try that point by point method, your outline's probably going to look a little differently or a little different. So just bear that in mind. So again, this is not the only way to conceive of or to structure your paper or to help organize your paper. This is just one way. So keep that in mind. And let's just move through this quickly. In the introduction section, we're gonna have some context. You're gonna introduce your problem. If you focus on a central sort of author or text throughout your paper, feel free to introduce that here. This is again not the place for you to introduce all of your sources or something like that. This is just that, as we talked about before, that moment that if you do have that one source, you're sort of um, having accompany you throughout each of the paragraphs and pages of your paper, reflecting or comparing as you go. That'd be the place to introduce that here. Talking about the stakes, stakeholders, maybe slightly hinting at your solutions or what some solutions could be. Mm. Again, this is just the introduction. No, no lengthy descriptions or explanations of solutions here yet. But the reason why I say you may want to hint at some things is because you're going to get down here to your thesis statement, and you are going to want to say something about that. Your argument for, after all, is going to be comprised not only of the problem as you see it associated with your topic, but also the solutions. If you do, moving down here a little bit, if you do have a central author or text, you may want to take a moment to summarize that here for your reader so they see what you're up to as you move through your paper. If you don't make this move in your intro and you're not going to, go ahead and omit this part. This is just optional. The next sort of section, I'm trying not to think of these necessarily as just paragraphs. Maybe some of them could be, probably not. These are more like sections of your paper. So you'll have this section where you um, explain and describe what the problem is associated with your topic, the thing that you laid out up here. Exactly what is it? Maybe you can start bringing in some of your source material here, relying on direct quotations or paraphrases um, to help you make clear what is the problem associated with your topic, the scope, the significance. Um, in other words, your reader needs to understand the parameters, the playing field, the landscape of your problem. You'll want to be precise and specific enough to leave your reader with a clear picture of what it is. This is not the time for leaving it up to your reader to infer or to guess at what you mean. You make this crystal clear here. Um, this is often um, a move that can be made in these types of papers where you talk about the problem here, then maybe this is almost like contextualizing the problem or um, making it more tangible or um, practically speaking, that's letting your reader know that this isn't just some kind of sort of abstract concept or something like that, that this is actually something that's happening. Here are some causes. Again, you might, when that there's evidence up here associated with the problem, try not to think of it, that's the only place. In each one of these sections, you're going to want to have evidence. You're going to want to have rely on source material. You're going to want to bring that in with, accurate and correct citations. So, um, rely on those sources to help you articulate what the problem is associated with your topic. Um, and not just what it is, but here I have ideas like why does it persist? Why isn't it going away? This will help set you up for later when you start talking about the solutions. Um, And I mean, contributing factors, what's all involved in the causing and perpetuating of this problem. So this is just like further introducing it, laying it out. This is where you get into a little bit more detail. Again, here, after you've described your problem in great detail, you might want to have a separate section here, a paragraph or paragraphs, plural, where you name who and what is affected. Um, and really getting to this place where, well, where are we with it? Nothing is changing. Why is this urgent? Why is it a crisis? What if nothing ever changes? That's sort of an interesting place to pause momentarily in your paper, and then that's when you jump right in with your solutions. One way of beginning to talk about your solutions, to move on to another section here, is by maybe um, demonstrating for your reader what is already on the table, what's already being tried. Maybe there are some solutions addressing your problem, and maybe they're even working to an extent. But the way that you see it, maybe they're insufficient. Maybe something else needs to be done. Um, Maybe your argument is that in addition to these things, if other solutions were implemented, um, then really maybe some progress could be made. So that would be how do I get rid of this here? That would be a perfectly viable way to go about um, transitioning to your solutions section. Of course, the culminating move is the actual solutions that you're proposing. You want to try and get to a place where you're proposing novel ideas. If your paper is going to be nothing but reporting on solutions that already exist, I think it's a pretty significant missed opportunity. This paper is really an opportunity for you to put on your thinking caps and take a look at some actual problems, like we've talked about in class, whether they're related to your discipline or your major or the career that you want to go into. Um, take a look at the reading, take a look at the source material, and see if you can come up with something novel that hasn't been brought up yet. If and when you do that, you need to clearly lay everything out, clearly articulate things. Here, you're going to want to rely on source material even more. Depending on how novel your idea is, there might not be a lot of source material, so that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Um, if you think you have a solution that nobody's talking about, you maybe you want to be a little bit vague, in fact, so you don't get scooped, so you can make clear it's your idea. Well, you will have documented it with this paper anyway. Um, Addressing objections, I don't know why I put that. You should just put counter arguments. Here's your chance to. It's not just about counter arguments, though. I mean, you need to be fair and proceeding with an effective ethos. uh, Understanding that your solutions might have certain limitations. Maybe they cost too much. Maybe the political will isn't there. Maybe it would take too long for it to be a viable solution. Whatever it happens to be, try not to just focus on counter arguments here, although please do find them and uh, consider them and engage with them. But also these other ideas. What other considerations are there that may stand in the way of your solutions being implemented? Of course, in your conclusion, you'll want to do the standard wrap up, um, but really focusing on this part, the value and the impact of your solutions, particularly again, if they hopefully you'll at least have something that's novel. Um, that's probably going to be the most important part of your concluding remarks. This doesn't have to be in one paragraph like we often do. Um, Organize and structure your conclusion as you see fit. If you want to do the sort of typical standard wrapping up, that's fine. And if you want to have a separate, maybe final paragraph where you evaluate and assess the solutions as you presented them and talk about this, the value and impact, I think that would be a pretty terrific move. Um, okay, we took a few minutes just to go over this skeleton. I want to show you. Um, so here are some ways just how an outline could look. I understand this is seeming like a lot of work when you've got a paper to write, but again, this if you take just it shouldn't take very long. Especially if you've been thinking about this, you've been doing some research, you've got some sources lined up, to just take, some sections, introduction, problem, causes, the effects, the solutions, just labeling in an outline form and jotting down some ideas. Um, Even what I have here labeled as a weak outline, even something like this could be helpful, helping you get on good footing to really launch you into a rough draft. Understanding, of course, that there are, I call this one the stronger of the two, more effective ways of doing this. If you're going to take the time to um, to make an outline, why don't you take an extra step and just expand slightly? I mean, look at this. It's You're just writing basically a full sentence, with the full detailed sentence instead of basically what are almost phrases here. I guess technically they're sentences, but try to hammer out a thesis statement even at this stage in an outline form. Um, when you're beginning to get into the problem section, instead of just reminding yourself like this to include some sources, find a source, put it down here. Maybe offer an insight or two into what that source is, related to a claim that you're going to make about your problem. Um, you include some bullet points about, um, what. characteristics of the problem, um, who they're affecting, what they're affecting. Just name some things here. Um, there's no one way of doing this. So, subpoints here they don't have to be, they can be under the main points up here. But if you have something else to say, maybe it's not one of the main things you're going to focus on, but you may touch on or bring up, that's where you can further organize or subcategorize um, the ideas as you see them. I just wanted to show you that a lot of times students will end up um, shortchanging themselves, putting down a little information, which again is better than nothing, when you could spend a little more time on it and really flesh out the ideas that you have. Sometimes this could really go a long way into helping you begin to compose paragraphs even. Same thing here with the causes. So here's a little bitty section that lists some causes, and that's fine. That's something. Versus having separate sections with each talking about using or relying on a different source. Your finished product is probably going to have multiple sources for each of these considerations, but at least you're getting a start. At least you're beginning to see your ideas take shape. When you write down an idea like this, and it's an outline form. One of the neat things you can do is you could just, put the cursor there at the end and just start hammering away, just start typing out stuff. Free form almost. You don't have to worry about it being, a MLA paragraph or any of that stuff. Just start typing. It's like a sandbox for you to create. That's one of the neat things, again, these are for. Um, and on and on. And you can do this with each of you know, the sections as you see fit. Again, we have a very minimalistic sort of construal of the effects here, and here we've expanded it a bit more. Instead of just solutions being 3 bullet points, I mean, um, this other one over here has whole sections dedicated to the existing solutions. Here are the proposed or the novel solutions. Um, just like we talked about in our skeleton outline before, here's some limitations and considerations, along with counter arguments, rather than just over here where we're jumping to conclusions. So, taking care, and yeah, I don't know how long this would take. It depends on how quickly you work and how, intimate you are with your source material. Um, but even if this took a couple of hours to put together an outline like this, um, I know it seems like a lot of work, but the value in having a means of organizing your thoughts when you actually sit down to write, um, it's really hard to overstate. So I wanted to share this with you. I hope it's helpful to all of you. At least it will be helpful to a few of you. Um, Let me know if you want to talk about any of this or if you have any questions or concerns.